Well, kia ora. And welcome to those of you online as well. Don't we have some amazing partners with both BSL and what's happening in our prison ministries too? Can we give these guys another hand of our deep appreciation? Hey, have you noticed how the luxury market is becoming increasingly absurd? Let me give you some examples. Here's a red brick here. You can go to Mitre 10 and get a red brick like this one without the logo for about $1.60, or you can buy one with their Supreme logo and pay like $1,000 per brick. Oh, it's absurd, isn't it? Here's another example. This might look like a trash bag. Actually, it's a leather bag designed to look like a trash bag, just in case you wanted one. And you can pay the cost of $1,790. The designer said this: "I couldn't miss an opportunity to make the most expensive trash bag in the world." Tiffany & Co. joined this trend with what they call their everyday objects collection. Here it is. So on the left there you have a tin can worth $1,000. You have a clothes peg worth $650. And my personal favourites there on the right, a sterling silver paperclip for $275. Don't you want one of those? And then even children's games aren't immune to this too. So you can go to Kmart and buy like a Jenka set for like $25, or you could get a Louis Vuitton Jenka set for $3,050. It's the same, just the Louis Vuitton logo comes onto the game set. Or here's actually my favorite. I think I said favorite before. I got like lots of favorites. Here's the Dolce and Gabbana gold pasta. It's actually just like normal pasta that you can eat, except it has like gold leaf plated around the pasta, literally, for about $150 per serving. I wonder what that would taste like. To which you might answer, you will never know. You will never know. See, all this is certainly one way to move money around and use money, isn't it? But Jesus has some other things to say about money. So we're in this series called It's Your Move, and we're talking about the different moves we can make as we follow after Jesus. And moves like baptism and gathering and joining connect groups and a whole bunch of different things, all designed to help us move closer to Jesus and his mission in the world. And obviously this starts with kind of an initial yes we might say to Jesus, but has like all these other yeses that we continue to make throughout our spiritual journey. And how we handle resources, how we move money is one of those moves we need to make. And this move actually probably reveals more of our heart and where we are than probably any other move that we're talking about. Now, you might be connecting today and you might be exploring faith, and you might kind of go, well, where does like faith and like money fit together? Because it's not like the way you think about it, but certainly Jesus connects faith and money vitally together. And he doesn't do it because he needs money. He does it because he knows this is something we all wrestle with. And typically what we do with our money, it's either money moves us or we move money. Typically is how things work in our lives. So Jesus actually spoke more about money than he did on most other topics. And so we have 2,300 Bible verses addressing wealth, possessions, and generosity. This subject is really important to the heart of God. So one of the things Jesus said about money is actually the one I find most surprising, is in Luke chapter 16. And Luke, the writer of this kind of biography of Jesus' life, there's like 4 of them. Luke was a medical doctor, and he came, he said this initial yes to Jesus, and then he began to make moves continually to follow after Jesus. And Luke in his biography actually talks more about money and the stories about money Jesus told than any of the other biographies in Jesus' life. And so, and I'm guessing that's because Luke had somehow seen or experienced what people had done with money and knew this was an important topic. So here in Luke chapter 16, Luke records a story that Jesus told to his followers. And as I said, this is a really surprising story. This is what we read. So Jesus told this story to his disciples. There was a certain rich man who had a manager handling his affairs. So take this away, 2 characters. You've got a rich man, you're the business owner, and then you have a manager of his affairs that he employs. One day, a report came that the manager was wasting his employer's money. So the employer called him in and said, "What's this I hear about you? Get your report in order because you're going to be fired. Word on the street is something fishy going on. I've got the auditors coming in. They're going to check out the accounts. And if what I hear about you is true, you're off. You're fired. Manager thought to himself, well, now what? My boss has fired me. I don't have the strength to dig ditches. I'm too proud to beg. I know. I know how to ensure that I'll have plenty of friends who will give me a home when I'm fired. So he comes up with this light bulb moment because he knows, he's a white-collar guy. He's not going to be able to hold down a practical job. He doesn't want to beg. He knows this has been a really good gig, but he knows, he hasn't been straight up with how he should have dealt with all the money. But he has this light bulb moment to use a little bit of time he still has before the auditors find out what's been happening. He has a little bit of opportunity, and so he steps in. This is his plan. So he invited each person who owed money to his employer to come and discuss the situation. He asked the first one, how much do you owe him? Now remember, at this stage, he's still in charge of the book, so it's a little dodgy, still has a little bit of time, a little bit of opportunity, and so he leverages that. So he asked the first one, how much do you owe? The man replied, I owe him 800 gallons of olive oil. So the manager told him, well, take the bill and quickly change it to 400 gallons. So 800 gallons is going to take you quite a while to pay, but tell you what, I'm in a mood for a deal today. I'll like 50% cut. If you can pay that debt of 400 gallons right now, let's just, call it evens. Now the guy can't believe his luck, calls on a few favors, makes some electronic transfers, it's all there, and the guy starts to leave, and he says, this guy that he's just paid the debt to says to him, well, thank you for making my day today. I was in this hole and you've kind of made my day. And he turns around and then he turns back again and says, by the way, if I could ever repay the favor one day, you be sure to let me know. To which the dishonest manager kind of like smirks as he's walking out the room and says under his breath, you know that I will be in touch with you pretty soon. The story goes on. It goes to the next person. How much do you owe my employer? I owe him 1,000 bushels of wheat, was the reply. Here the manager said, take the bill and change it to 800 bushels. 800 bushels, that's a lot of wheat you kind of owe, but let's do like a 20% reduction. If you can like cut a deal right now and deal with this, 20% is off the bill. Guy can't believe his luck. Again, transfers the money, does what he needs to do. And this is what he does for every single person that owed money to his employer. He goes through all of them at his deal day, and he is making some wonderful friends with his generosity. By the time all this is done, the auditors have gone through all the books. The business owner realizes this guy's been a crook. And on top of that, he now hears that this guy's like making deals with a little bit of time and opportunity he still had. And so we come to the end of the story. And the end of the story is like the surprising twist as Jesus says this. It's true. The rich man had to admire the dishonest rascal for being so shrewd. It's kind of an unexpected twist in the story, isn't it? Here's the business owner who says he admires how this guy has acted decisively when his own interests were at stake. This guy is one shrewd individual because he knew how to act in his own best interest to take that little bit of time, that little bit of opportunity, and set something up for himself for the rest of his life. So what do we do with a story like this one? Is Jesus teaching us to be dishonest business people? Well, thankfully, Jesus goes on and tells us his point. He says this. It's true that the children of this world, and that's kind of like a kind of a pet name Jesus has for people who believe this world is all there is. And so they live in light of this world. And so they just like focused on what's going to bring them happiness both now and into the future of this world. So Jesus says it's true that the children of this world are more shrewd in dealing with the world around them than are the children of light, than people of faith. Jesus says people focus solely on this world tend to make strategic moves. They're quite shrewd with their money, with their resources, because they know what's good for their own future. Meanwhile, people who believe in an eternity, who believe there's a God and that we will have an eternity with him, aren't actually so shrewd, aren't so savvy when it comes to material wealth. If you could sum it up, his big idea would be as shrewd with your money for eternal purposes as worldly people are for temporary gain. His point is that those who believe that there's something bigger, we need to learn a lesson from this dishonest money manager, because this guy knew how to act for his own best interests. Well, weird story, isn't it? So out of that, Jesus now tells us 3 moves that he wants his followers to make with their stuff. 3 moves that matter to deal with generosity. So move number 1, move your money to make eternal friends. This is the way Jesus sums it up. Here's the lesson, he says. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then when your earthly possessions are gone, they will welcome you into an eternal home. So think back to the story. This shrewd, dishonest rascal of a businessman cut deals with people because he wanted to make friends that would help him later on. And Jesus says, in the same way, we who have faith should be even more savvy and strategic, using our temporary resources as this tool to make eternal friends. Now, I remember the first time I came face to face with this story. Around that time, I'd heard about a new mission work happening in the northwestern area of rural Thailand. And the people in this particular Animus village were wanting fresh running water, they wanted sanitation, they wanted a school in their neighborhood, and there was a particular group that could go in and help them through those places, but they were looking for money. Now at that time, my wife Robin and I were already giving 10% of what we were earning to like church and mission organizations, but there was something about this particular project. I just wanted to be like an investor in that project too. So just a year earlier, Robin had done this beautiful act of generosity and bought me this cool fish tank for my birthday. Here's a picture of it here. And she knew that it's like one of my dreams since I was a little boy was to have like a tank like this. It had like 50 fish swimming around there, beautiful filter and lights and everything else. I'd be like mesmerized at night, just like sitting there watching my tank. But there was something about this story that Jesus told that started to get under my skin as I started to realize I actually want to be part of investing in this mission work happening in Thailand. And so I decided, well, actually the only way we can do that is I'm going to sell my fish tank, even though I love it, and I'm going to put those kind of profits into kind of an investment into this mission organization. And then 12 years later, just this past month, I received a report from that mission group along with some photos. And a church is now established in that area. There's a school, there's sanitation, there's clean running water. And they're doing so well, in fact, the government has now stepped in and has agreed to fund the school and what it's doing. There's a beautiful church, a vibrant church in that area. And it's what we call Project Thailand. And some of you were involved in investing in that work as well. And effectively, our combined moves of generosity all kind of came together to bring joy to a particular village in the northern parts of Thailand. And they have more joy now than I had when I was staring at my fish tank. Now, there's nothing wrong with a fish tank at all, but I am so grateful that I chose to do that and made moves towards generosity, that I got to be part of their story too. And this is what Jesus is saying in the story. Use your money to make friends who will welcome you into eternal dwellings. So if you make this move, you will hear somebody say something like, I was like 6 years old and came to Gracecity when my parents came to your church and I met Jesus in the kids ministry there, and thank you that you gave generously to enable that to happen. Or somebody might say to you, I came along to your Connect group and I was so close to throwing it all in, but you came around and supported me in that time. Thank you for generously providing that living room for us to meet in. Or I was one of the CAP clients at your church, and my household I was part of, we were in over our heads, but somebody came along and just sat with us and helped us get out of debt, and through that process I met Jesus. Or in my case, you sold that fish tank, and I came to know Jesus, and my whole household came to know Jesus through what happened. And you're welcomed into friends who will welcome you into your eternal future. See, a move towards generosity is not just a move that helps others, but Jesus says it's actually a shrewd investment for your own future. Now, interestingly, current research backs this up as well. Arthur Brooks, who's a Christian author and leads a podcast, The Art of Happiness, and has served at Harvard Business School. He interviewed 30,000 households. This was the most comprehensive study of its kind in USA. Christians were asked about like family life, about what they earned, what they gave, about their education, data all collated from staff at Harvard. And his research found that people who gave regularly and generously are 43% more likely to say they're very happy compared to non-givers. Now, that part of the research isn't really that much of a surprise because a lot of research has mentioned that over many decades. The part that was really surprising, particularly to him as the lead researcher, was this next part. He said, households that give regularly experience higher income growth than comparable non-giving households. So he broke this down. He said, if you've got like two households and one, they come from the same religion, the same geography, same educational background, kind of everything's like as identical as it can be, but household one gives $100 more in charitable giving than household B. Household A will receive $375 more in every dollar that they give, every $100 that they give. And that's not what they were expecting. In fact, he says, as a social scientist, I was initially skeptical that giving precedes success. But the data forced me to conclude that generosity is a key ingredient in creating prosperity. It's counterintuitive to everything I've been taught in economics. So, in fact, if you hear his research, he says, we actually bought a new software thing. We re-inputted all the data because we were skeptical that this was correct. Something must be wrong. And then the same results came out, not just when it came to giving financially, but volunteerism and even blood donors. And anyone that was giving was receiving back in kind. The evidence from across the globe, he says, shows that givers actually wind up with more income than non-givers. It's not that people give because they're rich. It might be they're rich because they give. He concludes the secret to human happiness is not earning more, not learning more, not having more friends or a perfect spouse. The secret is giving more. In other words, it's not just those who get it, benefit from it, but it's those who give it are able to be transformed by it too. Now, we're all aware of the abuse this kind of idea can bring. And I don't want to encourage the abuse of that, but at the same time, many of us move so far away from this idea that we almost we're not shrewd with this idea anymore either. Now, at this point, you might kind of say, well, yeah, I think I'll get around to that later. But it simply highlights another move that we need to make that Jesus speaks about. It's a move from later to now. You see, I've been a pastor quite a while now, and what I've learned over time is I've never, ever, in all my years as a pastor, ever heard someone say they don't want to be generous. As God stirs a person's heart as they come to know Jesus and follow him, there's something that happens within where we have the desire to be generous towards other people. A good-hearted Christian will never say no to generosity. I've never seen them lock their arms and say, no, I'm never going to be generous. I never will be. But what typically is said is not actually out loud. It's just this word or idea later. So imagine a teenager has just begun an after-school job. He's earning a few dollars, but he's just a teenager. He hears about this conversation about generosity, and he just says, well, that's a conversation for adults. I'll get to it later. Later comes and he graduates from university, he marries, both of them want to be generous, but they've got student loans, they're just starting out in their careers, they want to save money for a deposit on a house. They don't say no, they say later. And the kids arrive, and kids are expensive. I've got 4 of them, I kind of have a bit of a take on that one. A couple, goes from 2 incomes to like an income and a half, and their expenses have gone up, and they don't say no to generosity, they say later. Then all of a sudden they're 50 and they're saving for retirement to be done, and for 30 years, do you really think they're going to now change when for 30 years they have this habit of always spending what they earn and never thinking at all about other people? It's always been later. And I think what I've come to realize as a pastor is this idea of later actually is synonymous with no. And we never say it out loud. Our intent is to give, but we never, ever get around to it. And Jesus says there's this easy test to whether we know whether we'll be generous with whatever age or season. And it's not about how much you give, it's about what you do with whatever you have, whether it's little or a lot. Jesus says this: if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. It's not about how much you give, it's about the faithfulness in whatever you have. If you're dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. If you're untrustworthy about worldly wealth, He will trust you with the true riches of heaven. If you're not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with things of your own? Generosity has nothing to do with what you have. It's what you, or how much you give. It's what you do with what you already have. You know, one beautiful example of this is Robert Laidlaw, who was the founder of Farmers. Robert Laidlaw was a Christian man who began giving 10% very early on when he was a teenager. And then when he began Farmers, he continued that trend. And as the business grew, he decided to not just give 10%, but to keep increasing the percentages of what he could give. Farmers got so successful that in the end, he was kind of a reverse type. He was living on 10% and giving away 90%. Now most people, their livelihood just going to grow with their wealth, but he decided to actually draw a line around what was appropriate and to give more. And there are churches dotted all around Auckland still today who have benefited from starting. He was, kind of funding church plants, and there's like churches all around our city whose pews are still there that were donated by him at the time. He was faithful in what he had, and God continued to increase what he had because he was generous with it. See, where do you begin? The question is just now, with whatever you have. Because it's not about the amount, it's just this posture of your heart willing to be generous. Don't get fixated on the amount. It might be 1%, it might be 2%, it might be 0.5%, whatever it is, you just step in. Because it's not just benefiting others, it's also benefiting you. So look at two moves. To move your money to make eternal relationships, and to move from later to now. One more move Jesus talks about here in our story. It's moved from mastered to mastering. If you want to put it a different way, allowing money not to move you, but you moving money. Here's in our story. Jesus sums it up in verse 13. No one can serve two masters. For you will hate one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one or despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. See, if you don't master money by making the right moves, it will ultimately master you. It's either that you move money or it will move you and move your heart. Now, again, here's the thing I've observed over years of being a pastor. I've never heard anyone say to me, money is my master. It's almost like we might be blind to that scenario, or we don't own up to it. We might see it in others, but it's like that person never sees it in themselves. But Jesus says this happens. And it can happen to the people you least expect to happen to. And so what I find super interesting here in the story is the verse straight after the story finishes. Jesus says about a group that were lovers of money. They were called the Pharisees. He says this in verse 14. The Pharisees, who dearly loved their money, heard all this and scoffed at Jesus. And Jesus said to them, you like to appear righteous in public. God knows your hearts. And what this world honors is detestable in the sight of God. Apparently, one of the reasons the Pharisees hated Jesus and hated what he taught ultimately comes down to where their heart was around money. And they, when they looked in the mirror, they thought they were good, godly citizens. Other people looked at them and thought they were good, godly citizens. Jesus looked at them and saw them as lovers of money. So I sat with that this week and kind of felt just uncomfortable and just reflected, how would I know if I'm a lover of money? This is what I wrote down. You might not agree with my list, but this is my musings on it. I wrote, when I find my thoughts returning again and again to something I'm hoping to buy, I'm in love with money and its power to get me what I think I need. When I make decisions that are spiritually unwise for myself and my household, I'm in love with my money and my plan for getting more of it. When I find myself wishing I had something someone else has, I'm in love with money and the status or convenience or pleasure it seems to bring. When I'm not trusting God to provide for my needs today and tomorrow, I'm in love with money and its power to make me feel more secure. And when I'm unable to give any percentage of what I earn to charitable causes, I'm in love with money and the belief that I will start later. Now that's my list. You might not agree with my list, but maybe just take some time to think about your own list. Because if the religious leaders of Jesus' day were actually found to be lovers of money, I think it means that it can happen to any single one of us. That's why Jesus is wanting us to wake up and just be aware of the hold that money and stuff can have over our heart and our journey with Jesus. So mainstream culture, it teaches us to be shrewd with money for temporary gain. But in this story, I think we can sum it up as this way: be as shrewd with your money for eternal purposes as worldly people are for temporary gain. And obviously during this series, we're looking at different moves we're meant to make as we follow after Jesus. This one probably reveals more of our heart than any other move we make. Because money's always constantly pulling at our heart, seeking to move us. But if we can become intentional about moving money rather than allowing it to move us, we will grow more and more towards Jesus and his heart for lost and his heart for what really matters in the world. So what might this actually look like? Well, in the early church, when Paul was writing to a group of churches, he speaks about a beautiful example of the churches of Macedonia. And at the time that this group of churches didn't have a lot, there was kind of like a financial kind of crisis happening in their world, but they didn't have a lot, but they heard about a need that existed in another church over in Jerusalem. And he talks about the way this group still responded, even with the limitations of what they had. He says this: I can testify that this group gave not only what they could afford, but far more. And they did it of their own free will. For their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to do. And he goes on to talk about the way our response should always be in response to the incredible generosity from God himself. He says, you know the generous grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty he could make you rich. And effectively, he's appealing to what we're talking about today. That Jesus made a move to empty himself for the sake of others. So you do the same and do that to make eternal friends with others. That he didn't just say later, he said now, and he stepped in. Do the same. And he didn't allow money to master him, but he moved it and used it to bring other people to faith. And so as we close, just want to think about some practical steps that you might want to consider even today. First of all, just to begin a regular gift to Gracecity, to another group that you just want to invest in. And many of you are new to our church. We have lots of new people over these last few months, and you might be connecting online or here in the room, and you've never thought about this, and that's okay. But if you're now part, you'd kind of consider Gracecity to be your home, we would love you to step into this space. You know, churches like ours, it doesn't like operate from some other thing out there that gives money. We operate from the generosity of all of us stepping into this space. So if you're new and you've never invested in this part in a regular way, we'd love you to consider what that looks like. There's a lot of ways of doing that through push pay or automatic payments and different ways that you can do that too. Now, some of you have been doing this for some time. In fact, you might be like me and you set up an automatic payment a long time ago, and it's so easy to set that up and almost like forget it's there and we never go back and review it. And it might be that lots of things have changed in your life where you might be able to increase that in some way. If that's you, love you to consider what that regular gift looks like going forward too. Second step that you might want to think of is contributing an additional gift, a one-off gift. And so you heard about this campaign earlier, 1 day's wages. Now, the whole idea is that you don't take from your regular giving over to 1 day's wages, because that actually doesn't help anybody at all. It's just like redirecting things. What we're asking is, in addition to your regular giving, you would consider just a 1 day's wage. And so you can do the maths right now. I did this for myself this morning, sat down, thought about this and thought, oh, okay, this is what that looks like. And just want to encourage you to do the same. It might be $1, it might be more dollars than that. It's just investing in something. And we began this campaign last year. This year for 2025, we've committed ourselves to $126,900 going towards our local and global partnerships. Now, obviously, everything we do as a church is about mission. So our children ministry, youth, services, everything's about mission. But these partners we have, like the ones you've heard about today, we want to invest in particular ways and seeking to give $126,900 to meet our financial commitments towards them. And so you can do that right now. You might have missed the QR code before. You can find out more about those partners or just to give in that kind of one-off gift and just use a reference there. 1 day or 1 day's wages, and every dollar and cent that we receive through that will go towards our global and local partners. And final thing is just creative giving. You know, here at Green Lane, our roof is currently being redone because it's starting to leak, and we have some fresh air filters also coming through. It's at a cost of $160,000. It's a lot of money. And do you know how that was funded? It was funded through a guy called Bob Shaw, who's at the back here. He'll hate this right now, but Bob has volunteered with us for over 3 years, and the saving we were able to make through the way he volunteered in that role has enabled us to redo some of that maintenance that he wanted us to do. It's just getting creative, isn't it? And all of us are able to be creative. In fact, one of the advantages of living and being a taxpayer in New Zealand is that when you give towards a charitable organisation like Gracecity, you're able to receive a third of that back and reinvest it again and again and again. So March, it's always at the end of March that you get like donation receipts up into that period. So March is a really shrewd time to get creative in your giving to. Or it might be that you have a fish tank that you want to sell, or a room to rent, or some additional resources. I think when we hear the story of Jesus, it's this reminder to all of us, just be shrewd with what you have for eternal purposes. Be more shrewd than people of this world who are pretty good with their money for themselves. So why not do the same as you think about eternity? So easy, isn't it, to be consumed in a world of shinier and faster and newer and bigger and brighter. And Jesus just says to us, would you be consumed with me? Would you be consumed with kingdom purposes? Would you move your money before your money moves you? I wonder if you can stand with me as we pray and prepare to take communion, which is really a reminder to us of just the incredible generosity of God towards us. And you might just want to even put your hands out today as a way of reminding you that everything we receive comes from God, and we need God to provide everything for us. But to have hands that are open and not grasping through what He gives to us either. And so Jesus, here we are. We thank you for the breath we have. Thank you for this world that we live in. We thank you for the way you have provided everything that we need. And so with our hands open, we are looking to you and trust that you would provide every single thing we need. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, relationally. We want to express our trust in you. We also want to respond to say all of our life is yours. And so would you, by your Spirit, guide and lead us to be people who are generous, to be people who don't allow money to move us, but make the choices we need to move money towards what matters most. And as we come to these tables now, we remember your incredible grace. We remember, Jesus, how you, being rich for our sakes, became poor, ultimately to make eternal friends of us. So help us to move towards you and your heart and your practice, to be generous in our posture, in our decision making, in our lives, that our lives would reflect your generosity towards us. We love you, Jesus. We want to move towards you in all ways. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. And we all said, amen.